time now to begin the 5th day of our study class on the dramatic story of the prophecies from sacred scripture fulfilled by the coming of Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i Faith.
All right. Let's talk about some of the questions that people ask you. Perhaps they say, Baha'u'llah's name is strange. Baha'u'llah, what does it mean? And what about false prophets? Well, the Baha'is have wonderful answers from the sacred scriptures for all of these questions, and they're delighted when people ask them. When your friends hear the answers, they will know once and for all that Baha'u'llah is the true promised one, and not a false prophet. They will realize that Baha'u'llah is exactly who he says he is, the promised one of all religions, the return of Christ, the Redeemer of men. So I suggest we get down to these questions.
If the people you are teaching happen to be Bible-loving, prophecy-loving Christians, very often they might say, well, this is all very wonderful and beautiful. I love it, and I wish I could believe it. Why don't you? You ask them. They say, I keep remembering the words of Christ. Beware of false prophets.
The answer to that question is one of the most exciting of all. And this is one of the most welcome questions to Baha'is. Isn't that interesting? Christ did say clearly, beware of false prophets. Christ also said, take heed that no man deceive you. But don't forget, those last words are in the very same chapter in which Christ speaks of his coming, about his return, and tells his disciples exactly how they can recognize the time of his coming. The reason Christ gives his followers such clear evidence of when he will return in this chapter about false prophets is so they won't make a mistake.
Christ made 3 promises to them so they could avoid making a mistake. When those 3 promises were fulfilled, Christ told them they would know it was the time of his return. They could be sure.
We studied these prophecies during the 2nd day of our study class, and we learned that all 3 of those promises of Christ were fulfilled by the year 1844, the year of the birth of the Baha'i Faith. If you missed that day, perhaps you will want to go back and hear the words again. Even more important, Christ, in the chapter of Matthew which deals with false prophets, tells the Christians exactly how they can determine whether a prophet is false or not. Well, who could ask for more than that? Christ gives his followers a simple, clear formula, one which they can use to determine if a prophet is true or false. What was that formula? Prophecy.
Matthew chapter 7, verses 15 through 19. Beware of false prophets which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. Ye shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns, or figs of thistles? Even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree, bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Wherefore, by their fruits ye shall know them.
By their fruits ye shall know them. Well, nothing could be plainer than that, right? You shall know the prophet by his fruits. If he brings forth bad fruit, he's a false prophet. If he brings forth good fruit, he's true. Know him by the fruits he brings to mankind. Christ said that. So let us see how Baha'u'llah measures up to this formula of Jesus. No messenger of God since the beginning of time ever brought forth as many good fruits as Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i Faith. That is why his tree has not been hewn down and cast into the fire. Instead, the tree of his faith has grown and grown until now it has spread out its branches into over 50,000 places in all the continents, lands, and islands of the earth.
Please click like for this video and subscribe for more great content.
Baha'u'llah's teachings bring a healing message to all men. Among these fruits are the love of God, the love of man, the elimination of all forms of prejudice, the independent investigation of truth, the pursuit of peace, the harmonizing of capital and labor, education for all children and peoples, the elimination of extremes of wealth and poverty, the harmony of religion and science, the equality of opportunity for both women and men, and these are but a few of the wonderful things which Baha'u'llah has taught. On and on and on go the fruits of Baha'u'llah by which you may judge him. Baha'u'llah not only taught these principles, he showed mankind how they could be established. Baha'u'llah wrote over 100 volumes upon all aspects of life. These books are filled with spiritual fruits to nourish mankind. It was a famous Christian clergyman, Dr. T.K. Cheney of Oxford University in England, who said,
"If there is any prophet in recent times, it is to Baha'u'llah that we must go." Baha'u'llah was a man of the highest class, that of prophets.
Why? Because of the fruits which Baha'u'llah brought to the world. Isn't that exciting? This is yet another of the promises of Christ fulfilled by the coming of Baha'u'llah. The Christians of the world can hasten to embrace the faith of Baha'u'llah, confident that he is a true prophet. They need delay no longer. It was not a Baha'i, but a Christian educator and scholar, Dr. George Washington Carver of Tuskegee Institute, who said of the faith of Baha'u'llah,
"I am so happy to know that the Christ-like,"
note those words, the Christ-like
gospel of goodwill is growing throughout the world. You hold in your organization, the Baha'i Faith, the key that will settle all of our difficulties, real and imaginary. May God bless, keep, and prosper you."
Why did this great Negro educator say that? Because of the fruits that Baha'u'llah brought into the world, that's why. A famous historian, Dr. Herbert Adams Gibbons, also a Christian and not a Baha'i, called Baha'u'llah's teachings a regenerating force in the world. Dr. Gibbons said,
"Taken together,
the teachings of Baha'u'llah,
they form an unanswerable argument and plea for the only way that the world can be made over."
Why? Because of the fruits which Baha'u'llah brought into the world. The love, the kindness, the generosity, the understanding, but above all, the social justice. Baha'u'llah has written,
"The best beloved of all things in my sight is justice. Turn not away therefrom, if thou desirest me."
Let me give you a few more excerpts of Baha'u'llah's words, taken from the book Gleanings from the Writings of Baha'u'llah. You judge for yourself what kind of fruits Baha'u'llah has brought into the world. For example, Baha'u'llah wrote, "The essence of faith is fewness of words and abundance of deeds. Beware lest ye walk in the ways of them whose words differ from their deeds. Men must show forth fruits. A fruitless man, in the words of His Holiness the Spirit, Jesus the Christ, is like a fruitless tree and is fit for the fire." End of quotation. Judge Baha'u'llah by those words, and by these.
"Let your acts be a guide to all mankind. It is through your deeds that ye can distinguish yourselves from others. Through them, the brightness of your light can be shed upon the whole earth."
The writings of Baha'u'llah's faith, his teachings, his fruits, can be seen also in these words from a book called Paris Talks, and from another book called The Promulgation of Universal Peace. Abdul-Baha, Baha'u'llah's son, explained these fruits, saying,
"Do not be content with showing friendship in words alone. Let your heart burn with loving kindness for all who cross your path."
This is another fruit by which to judge Baha'u'llah.
"Show the utmost kindness and compassion to the sick and suffering. This has greater effect than the remedy itself. You must always have His love and affection when you visit the ailing and afflicted."
And just these last few fruits, again from the book Gleanings from the Writings of Baha'u'llah. These fruits, remember, are but a thimbleful taken from the ocean of Baha'u'llah's writings. Baha'u'llah instructed that the people who love God must, I'm quoting now, be busied with whatever may be conducive to the betterment of the world and the education of its people. And in another place, Baha'u'llah writes this, "They who are the people of God have no ambition except to revive the world, to ennoble its life, and regenerate the people. Truthfulness and goodwill have at all times marked their relations with all men. Their outward conduct is but a reflection of their inward life, and this inward life a mirror of their outward conduct." Quotation ends.
Beloved friends, these words of Baha'u'llah will help those whom you are teaching to feel the love, the kindness, and the sweetness of the fruits of Baha'u'llah's teachings.
Now you can see why the Baha'is are so delighted when Christians ask them about false prophets. Because Christ himself told his followers, the Christians, how they could judge Baha'u'llah by his fruits. You have heard the opinions of illustrious Christian scholars, not Baha'is. You have seen how they have judged Baha'u'llah and praised him. There is an entire book, we mentioned it last time, called Appreciations of the Baha'i Faith, which lists many more, and you can study it later at your leisure. You can judge for yourself by his teachings about Baha'u'llah, by his life. You don't have to accept anyone else's opinion.
You will know that Baha'u'llah is a true and not a false prophet when you judge him by the standard of Christ himself. Baha'u'llah said we must have independent investigation of truth. Look into everything with a searching eye, he said.
You can read books about the Baha'i Faith, or if you do not read, have them read to you. Everything you hear will make you love Baha'u'llah more than ever. You will see that Baha'u'llah has indeed met every test set by Christ himself for the day of his return. I wrote much about this in a book called Thief in the Night, pages 201 to 250, nearly 50 pages of proofs.
Ye shall know them by their fruits.
There is another thing that people often say when first they hear about Baha'u'llah. They say, Baha'u'llah is a new name to me. I don't feel at home with it yet. Well, that's not a bad thing. That is a good thing. Be delighted that Baha'u'llah's name is a new one to you. If it were not a new name, Baha'u'llah could not be the promised one. He could not be the return of Christ. So instead of this new name being a handicap, it's one of the best and most wonderful things of all. That's in the Bible. It's prophecy. Perhaps the greatest of the prophets of Israel, Isaiah, spoke of the day when the religion of God would be spread around the world, the day which would see the glory of the Lord. When that day came, Isaiah said, his people, the people of God, would be called by a new name. Isn't that interesting? A new name. The faith of Baha'u'llah has now circled the world. The kings of the earth have fallen from their high places as prophesied by Baha'u'llah and foretold by Isaiah. Baha'u'llah's name in English means the glory of the Lord. Prophecy.
Isaiah chapter 62, verse 2. And the Gentiles shall see thy righteousness, and all the kings thy glory. And thou shalt be called by a new name, which the mouth of the Lord shall name.
That is exactly what has happened. The justice and righteousness of Baha'u'llah has become known among the Gentiles, among all the peoples of the world. You have already heard some of the praise which Christian scholars and writers have given to Baha'u'llah. In yet another place, Isaiah makes that same promise about the new name. It is in chapter 65, the same chapter in which Isaiah also speaks about the plain of Sharon and the valley of Achor, as the place where the herds of the Lord would lie down in safety in the last days. Baha'u'llah stood on Mount Carmel. There he announced to the world that the prophecies of the holy books had been fulfilled. I hope that each one of you will visit Mount Carmel and will see that spot. When you stand there, your back will be toward the plain of Sharon to the south, and you will look northward across the Bay of Haifa from Mount Carmel to the city of Achor on the other side of the bay. I hope you will remember those words about Isaiah and about Baha'u'llah then, about the glory of the Lord. Prophecy.
Isaiah chapter 65, verse 10. And Sharon shall be a fold of flocks, and the valley of Achor a place for the herds to lie down in, for my people that have sought me.
Prophecy.
Isaiah chapter 35, verse 2. The excellency of Carmel and Sharon, they shall see the glory of the Lord.
Isaiah, also in chapter 65, mentions the new name, and warns that those who turn aside from him, the promised one in that day, shall be cursed for such blindness. Prophecy.
And ye shall leave your name for a curse unto my chosen. For the Lord God shall call his servants by another name.
In the 56th chapter, Isaiah again mentions this new name. In that same chapter, Isaiah also mentions God's holy mountain, and says that there will be a house of prayer for all the peoples of the world built there. Isn't that fantastic? Because on Mount Carmel, on the very spot where Baha'u'llah, the glory of the Lord, stood, and announced that the promised one had come, there is already an obelisk indicating the spot where a house of prayer, a house of worship for all peoples will be built. It will be a house of prayer that will honor all the messengers and religions of God. Photographs of the raising of this obelisk were recently made public. Isn't that an incredible story? Listen to what Isaiah says in these excerpts from that same chapter 56, verses 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Even unto them will I give a name better than the sons and of daughters. I will give them an everlasting name that shall not be cut off. Even them will I bring to my holy mountain, and make them joyful in my house of prayer. For mine house shall be called an house of prayer for all people.
It is clear that this new name refers to Baha'u'llah and the Baha'is in the last days, and not to Christ and Christianity, because Christian scripture also prophesies of this same coming day. A promise of a new name that will be given to the followers of Christ on the day of his return is found in the book of Revelation. Prophecy.
Revelation chapter 3, verse 12. Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out. And I will write upon him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, which is New Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from my God, and I will write upon him my new name.
Isn't that wonderful and exciting? These prophecies make it clear that it will take a pure and sincere heart to understand the meaning of these words. For the very next verse says,
He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches.
He that hath an ear. He that hath a spiritual ear. Yet the churches have been silent for over a century. No word from them about the return of Christ, the coming of Baha'u'llah. Meanwhile, the world has gone from bad to worse, exactly as foreseen by Christ and Isaiah and the prophets of the past. Its condition will become worse still, until it will be, in the words of prophecy, such a time of trouble as was never seen before. Only those riding in the ship of God on that stormy sea will be safe in that day, the safe ship of Baha'u'llah's faith. Baha'u'llah's words make it very clear that he is the one who is meant in this prophecy about the new name. Baha'u'llah declared that the city of God had descended from heaven, and that Mount Carmel had been made the seat of his throne. Baha'u'llah writes,
Call out, O Zion, O Carmel, and announce the joyful tidings. He that was hidden from mortal eyes is come. Hasten forth, and circumambulate the city of God that hath descended from heaven.
The same wonderful story about the city of God descending from heaven in the last day is repeated in the final 2 chapters of the book of Revelation. Prophecy.
Chapter 21, verse 2. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven.
And again,
verse 5. And he that sat upon the throne said, Behold, I make all things new.
And in that same chapter, verse 23.
And the city had no need of the sun, neither of the moon, to shine in it, for the glory of God did lighten it.
Baha'u'llah's name means the glory of God. We know that. And Baha'u'llah stood there on that holy mountain and proclaimed that the city of God had once again descended upon the earth. That last book of Christian scripture speaks constantly about the return of Christ. In the final chapter are these words.
Chapter 22, verse 7. Behold, I come quickly. Blessed is he that keepeth the sayings of the prophecy of this book.
And there shall be no more mysteries, for the books were opened.
Verse 10. And he saith unto me, Seal not the sayings of the prophecy of this book, for the time is at hand.
And these words from the book of Revelation, words that are spoken directly to many of you who are Christians, who are now listening to our voices. The words of Revelation say,
Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have a right to the tree of life, and may enter through the gates into the city.
Baha'u'llah has thrown wide the gates. May thousands and thousands of you enter this city now, this very day, this very moment, in all parts of the world. and carry Baha'u'llah's healing message of truth and happiness to all mankind. Baha'u'llah stood on Mount Carmel, and the prophecies were fulfilled. In 100 volumes, Baha'u'llah brought the counsels, the truth, the fruits to redeem mankind. Can you afford to wait any longer? It is in this chapter of Revelation, chapter 3, that time and again the warning is given to the churches of Christ, and through them to all of his followers for all time, to be alert and to watch, and to look for his coming, and to watch for the day of his return. Revelation says,
If therefore thou shalt not watch, I will come on thee as a thief, and thou shalt not know what hour I will come upon thee.
Baha'u'llah announced his mission to the world well over 100 years ago. The Christian world was not watching. The book of Revelation also said in that same chapter, this is the one about the new name too, remember. In that same chapter it said, He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. 3 times that powerful phrase is repeated in a single chapter. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. There is no excuse for the followers of Christ not to have recognized Baha'u'llah in the day of his Christ's return. If there is any one thing we have learned in this study class, it is this. No prophet ever came with as many proofs, fulfilling so many prophecies, as did Baha'u'llah. Revelation chapter 3, verse 20 and 22. Prophecy.
Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice, and open the door, I will come in to him. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches.
Baha'u'llah has been knocking on the door for over 120 some years, and still the door has not been opened by the great masses of Christians. Isn't it time? The prophecy says,
I know thy works, that thou hast a name that thou livest, and art dead.
The Spirit is gone, which is only natural, for Christ has returned. The Christians, who should be the first to accept him, to recognize him, are among the last to accept him, in spite of all that both Christ and Baha'u'llah have done to open their eyes. Pity. Baha'u'llah himself wrote to the leaders of the Christian church, so that they might be among the first of those who would have an ear to hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. Baha'u'llah wrote,
This is that which the Son, Jesus, hath decreed, and whatsoever hath proceeded out of his, Christ's, blameless, his truth-speaking, trustworthy mouth, can never be altered.
End of quotation. End of a beautiful quotation. What a tender feeling Baha'u'llah had for Christ. It is understandable, for after all, they are one in spirit. It is like seeing one sun up in the heavens and holding up 2 mirrors to that sun. We see the light of Christ in one mirror and the light of Baha'u'llah in the other mirror. There is no difference between them, and that is what the return means. The same sunlight of God's truth shines in both the mirror of Christ and the mirror of Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah wrote to all the people of Christianity,
O concourse of Christians, were ye to be shut out as by a veil from him, this would be for no other reason than your own waywardness and ignorance. Ye make mention of me, and know me not.
In another place, Baha'u'llah wrote to the Christians, saying, O people of the gospel, they who were not in the kingdom, people who were not Christians, have now entered it, the kingdom. Whilst we behold you, the Christians, in this day, tarrying at the gate. We behold you, O children of the kingdom, in darkness. This verily beseemeth you not. O followers of the Spirit Jesus, walk not in the footsteps of every divine, religious leader that hath gone far astray. Open the doors of your hearts. He who is the Spirit Jesus verily standeth before them. End of quotation. The sun that shines in the mirror of Baha'u'llah is the same sun that shines in the mirror of Christ. That is what the return of Christ means. It is that simple. In the 2nd chapter of Revelation, we have yet another prophecy about a new name for the last day. Prophecy.
Revelation chapter 2, verse 17. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the hidden manna, and will give him a white stone, and in the white stone a new name written, which no man knoweth, saving he that receiveth it.
And how does that verse begin, Marguerite?
He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches.
Right. Isn't it about time they heard? Isn't it? I'm looking now at one of the fingers of my right hand. I'm wearing a Baha'i ring. Almost every Baha'i does. When a person accepts the blessed beauty of Baha'u'llah, the glory of God, the return of Christ, sooner or later, almost every Baha'i has his own ringstone. It's not obligatory, of course. It's just a wonderful, joyful thing. Each ring has a stone on which is engraved the name of Baha'u'llah, the glory of God, the new name of God for this day. The whole story of religion is told in this ringstone right here. It tells the story of the oneness of God, the oneness of religion, and the oneness of the messengers of God, and the oneness of all the peoples of the earth. It's all told in this stone, in the name of Baha'u'llah. It's a very beautiful story. There before you, you can see the new name written, the name Baha, one of the titles of Baha'u'llah. It is called the greatest name. Have you ever heard a more fascinating story than this? Because of time, of course, we've been able to touch upon only a few of the prophecies fulfilled by Baha'u'llah. It's like picking one blade of grass from a whole lawn, or taking one leaf from the tree and leaving the rest.
Now we see why it is such a wonderful thing that there is a new name for us in this day. Otherwise, Baha'u'llah and the Baha'i Faith could not be the truth.
This new name, instead of putting us off or slowing up our search, should thrill us. It should make us more eager than ever to press on with our search, so we can become part of this wonderful cause of God as soon as possible. And that is exactly what we are going to do tomorrow. We are going to press on with our search on the final day of our study class. We will share with you many more wonderful prophecies about Baha'u'llah, the glory of God, the founder of the Baha'i Faith, some of the most exciting prophecies of all.
We hope that before that last day, still more of you will want to join this radiant spiritual army of Baha'u'llah.
So we'll see you all at our next session.
We now come to the final day of our week-long study class on the wonderful prophecies fulfilled by the coming of Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i Faith.
Beloved friends, aren't we lucky? Lucky to have heard of Baha'u'llah on this day. Baha'u'llah has written down the key to the knowledge of all things from first to last. He has unsealed the knowledge of the holy books. The books are opened. The wise can now understand them, and the ignorant can understand them. The blind can see and the deaf can hear. Everyone can be a part of this great healing, world-redeeming faith. Let's make certain that none of us miss this great blessing and opportunity. Let us arise and teach everyone that we can.
We have spoken during this study class about the books being sealed until the coming of the Baha'i Faith and Baha'u'llah. At that time, the books were opened. This is why today there is nowhere else to turn to for guidance and advice except to Baha'u'llah.
That is what the Scriptures told us. The books are sealed to those leaders of religion who have failed to recognize Baha'u'llah. This is not only true of the people of the Christian faith, it is true of the people of all religions. Baha'u'llah is the promised one of all peoples and all religions, not just Christianity. It is useless to go to a mullah, a priest, a minister, or a rabbi in this day and hope that he can guide you to the true path and explain the meaning of the holy books. He can't. Only partially. However sincere and fine a person he may be, he is still living in a day that is past. If he has not accepted Baha'u'llah, the books are still closed to him. He cannot understand their meaning, much less explain them to others.
The promised one of all religions has come, and if you want to know what the words of the holy books mean, you have to turn to him. Baha'u'llah has unsealed their truth and their meaning. That is not just an idea of the Baha'is. The Bible itself made you that exact promise. It promised that the Messiah, the Redeemer of men, would do just that.
If there is any one thing that is clear in the holy books, it is this. When the Messiah comes, he will open the books and he will explain their meaning. Until he does that, they are closed and sealed to anyone else. The Messiah himself will tell us exactly when the time of the end began. No one else can tell us that either, except in general terms, because only the promised one can reveal the meaning of the books. The Jewish writer Isaac ben Judah Halevi cited in Silver's Messianic Speculation in Israel, page 86, says this very thing, and he is not a Baha'i, but a Jew. He states that the Messiah himself will set the date and the hour which shall be recognized as the start of the time of the end. In his own words,
"At the time of the end, when the Messiah will come, it shall become clear when the period actually began."
If this week has taught us any one other thing, it is this. No Christian who was really on the watch, as Christ instructed him to be, would have failed to examine the story of the coming of Baha'u'llah when he heard about it. The Christian clergyman R.A. Torrey, when he was the dean of the Bible Institute of Los Angeles, in his book The Return of the Lord Jesus, listed over 250 separate distinct passages on the certainty and consequences of the second coming of Christ. Still the Christian world is waiting because they didn't know the hour. But now they do, and so do you. You have been told. There is no need to wait a moment longer. This is the day and this is the hour for you to accept Baha'u'llah, the glory of God, the return of Christ. Baha'u'llah has fulfilled a multitude of wonderful prophecies from the sacred scripture. He is the return of Christ, the return you have been waiting for. The rest is up to you.
Those who have not accepted Baha'u'llah in this day are like those people mentioned in the book of Revelation who have a name to be alive but are dead.
These words should never be taken to be an attack on the religions of other people. Never. Or upon the clergymen of the world. Never. Baha'u'llah himself forbids such a thing. Baha'u'llah instructs the Baha'is to associate with the people of all religions, with joy and fragrance. Baha'u'llah praises the lofty station of those religious leaders whose behavior and deeds are as holy and noble as their words.
Such religious leaders, of whatever faith they may be, Baha'u'llah tells us, are like an eye to mankind, to guide it aright. We must honor them and we must respect them.
But we should not be misled by those who would close the door in the face of our search for truth. No one can be responsible for another man's soul. You'll have to be courageous if you want to enter Christ's promised kingdom today. We can't expect that our Christian leaders are going to lead their followers into the path. Perhaps they feel too much is at stake for them. Pity, for they are the losers. It was the same in the day of Christ's first coming. It's not something new. Jesus himself told his followers that. Prophecy.
Matthew chapter 5, verse 20. "For I say unto you, that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, ye shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven."
Christ warned people against those leaders who claimed that the spiritual law was in their hands. Yet they themselves turned aside from the messenger of God when he came, the very one whose coming they were instructed to be awake and to watch for. In Luke chapter 11, verse 52, Jesus said, Prophecy.
"Woe unto you, lawyers, for ye have taken away the key of knowledge. Ye have entered not in yourselves, and them that were entering in ye hindered."
So we see that in this day we must act according to our own feelings and our own inner beliefs. No man, no spiritual leader can tell us what our own heart tells us. Yet, beloved friends, you may be sure that there will be many wonderful heroic clergymen in these days who will accept Baha'u'llah, just as there were in the early days of Christianity, who will hear Baha'u'llah's message and accept it. Many already have. Over 400 of the leading clergymen accepted this faith in the land of its birth in its first years. Others are following. Priests, ministers, monks, nuns, sisters, bishops, archbishops, many religious leaders among the Christians today will hear the sound of Baha'u'llah's voice. Christ said, "My sheep will know my voice." These religious leaders will enter the faith of Baha'u'llah, and they will outshine by their deeds even those great heroes and heroines of the early days of Christianity. They are all around you now, waiting. Tell them the truth, and the sincere will respond. Be sure, if their hearts are prepared, they will accept. Teach them.
Thinking men and women everywhere in the world are beginning to realize that the world has no positive answers to its problems. They are on the watch for help, wherever they can find it. The time is ripe We must act.
We must teach, we the Baha'is. We must know that the one for whom Christ instructed his followers to watch has come. Christ said that the Spirit of truth would lead men to all truth. That Spirit of truth has come. The one who has the answers to all their problems has appeared. It is Baha'u'llah. It is up to us to tell the world about this in every city, town, village, and countryside. Beloved friends, our time together for this study class is rapidly coming to an end, for this is our final day together, and we've been able to mention but a few of the wonderful prophecies fulfilled by the coming of Baha'u'llah, the glory of God, the glory of the Lord. Even so, I feel sure that many of your friends who've been listening have already heard more than enough to make them want to open their hearts to Baha'u'llah and to embrace his faith, the Baha'i Faith. To these seekers, may I say that when you become a Baha'i, you will learn more and more marvelous things about his faith all the days of your life. Every year will bring you a richer, a deeper understanding, and a greater happiness as you immerse yourself in the ocean of Baha'u'llah's teachings. For Baha'u'llah, remember, is the Redeemer of men.
Never be discouraged if people turn away from you at the first as you try to teach them, or disagree with you. Be patient. Perhaps your family may refuse to listen, or perhaps some of them may look on you as strange. They may even be unkind, or insulting, or antagonistic, but you must be friendly, patient, and understanding.
Love them. Be kind, be courteous, be friendly. Those are commands of Baha'u'llah. After all, such opposition and antagonism was itself foretold in the Scriptures for the last days, wasn't it? That was another prophecy. It is another proof that Baha'u'llah really is the promised one. Prophecy.
Isaiah chapter 29, verse 14. Therefore, behold, I will proceed to do a marvelous work among this people, even a marvelous work and a wonder. For the wisdom of their wise men shall perish, and the understanding of their prudent men shall be hid.
Isn't it true? In his book, The Heritage of the Anglo-Saxon Race, pages 133-34, M.H. Goyer, a millennial Christian scholar, declared, I'm quoting him now, the skepticism and unbelief so prevalent concerning the second advent of Christ is in itself a sign of the last days. St. Peter tells us, there shall come in the last days scoffers, walking after their own lusts, and saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of creation. That's in 2 Peter 3:4. Now, one hears these, this is still a quotation from Goyer, one hears these very words everywhere today. Even among the leaders of the church, this terribly momentous event, return of Christ, is regarded with incredibility as visionary. End of quotation.
It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks or feels. It's what you think and feel. The story has been told to the world, beloved friends, time and again. Don't you be one of those who are spiritually blind and deaf.
Arise, because this is the day and the hour to recognize and accept your Redeemer, Baha'u'llah, the glory of God, the return of Christ. Become one of his teachers. Help spread his message around the world. In the words of St. Paul, therefore we ought to give the more earnest heed to the things which we have heard. How shall we escape if we neglect so great salvation? That's in Hebrews 2:1-3. Isaiah tells us in chapter 30 of his book that in this day the teachers of God will no longer be withdrawn from society. In the day of the Holy One, everyone will see these teachers, Isaiah says. They will proclaim his words, saying, this is the way, walk ye in it. And many of you know already that Baha'i teachers are pioneering in all parts of the world now. They are constantly on the move, traveling every day into the far corners of the earth. They're pioneers. They don't receive anything for the work they do. No pay. They do it because they love God and Baha'u'llah and the people of the world. The book of Psalms echoes this movement of the teachers too. This is also a prophecy. This is chapter 68, verse 11.
The Lord gave the word. Great was the company of those that published it.
This same chapter of the book of Psalms declares that all this would take place in the day when he, the promised one, would scatter the kings, exactly as Baha'u'llah has done. Isaiah, in chapter 30 of his book, also describes the new song that will be sung in the mountain of the Lord. His glorious voice, Isaiah says, will be heard everywhere. His teachers shall have a song of holiness, Isaiah tells us. I'm quoting now. As when one goeth with a pipe to come into the mountain of the Lord. After Baha'u'llah reached the Holy Land and walked on the side of Mount Carmel, he spoke of the song which God had stirred within his being. These are the words of Baha'u'llah.
Thou beholdest, O my God, how every bone in my body soundeth like a pipe with the music of thine inspiration.
End of quotation. That's on page 111 of Prayers and Meditations of Baha'u'llah. And let's hear still another prophecy.
Isaiah chapter 35 verse 1. The wilderness and the solitary place shall be glad for them, and the desert shall rejoice and blossom as the rose.
The plain of Acca where Baha'u'llah walked, and the rocky slopes of the wildernesses of Mount Carmel where he pitched his tent, have now been transformed into beautiful gardens with different colored flowers, including many varieties of roses. Indeed, the wilderness and the desert have blossomed, as Isaiah promised. In the same chapter in which Isaiah said the glory of the Lord would appear and the nations would flow unto him, Isaiah also makes two other prophecies, both of which have been fulfilled by Baha'u'llah, the glory of the Lord. For example, prophecy.
Isaiah chapter 60 verse 13. The glory of Lebanon shall come unto thee, the fir tree, the pine tree, and the box together, to beautify the place of my sanctuary.
When you visit the Holy Land and go to the shrine of Baha'u'llah, you will see in the midst of that once arid spot green lawns, flowering vines and trees, and blossoms of every hue and description. The tomb and sanctuary of Baha'u'llah has been beautified. It is a magnificent jewel in that lovely setting nestled amidst the cypress and evergreen trees. Your eyes will drink in the beauty of the araucaria, the eucalyptus, the fig, and the olive trees. Poinsettias, citrus, cacti, and thyme refresh the spirit and rest the eye. Baha'u'llah's sanctuary has indeed been beautified, and it will be even more so in the future. Same chapter of Isaiah, same verse, prophecy.
And I will make the place of my feet glorious.
Wherever you go in the Holy Land where the feet of Baha'u'llah have walked, you will see lovely gardens of matchless beauty. Those attractive red stone paths and white stone paths lead the way to imposing structures of stately beauty and grace. Roses of every hue, jacaranda trees, flame-colored flamboyant trees, flowering bougainvillea of many shades, crimson geraniums are seen on all sides. You will see some of the most beautiful gardens to be found in all of the world. And these are all places where the feet of Baha'u'llah, the glory of the Lord, have walked on the mountain of God and in the plain of Acca. The place of Baha'u'llah's feet has indeed been glorified. And here is yet another intriguing prophecy. This one is from Ezekiel. It is from the very same chapter in which Ezekiel prophesied that the glory of the Lord would come to his house in Israel by way of the gate from the east. And when he came, Ezekiel said, in his words, the glory of the Lord filled the house. Then, says Ezekiel, prophecy.
Chapter 43, verse 7. I will dwell in the midst of the children of Israel forever.
The shrine of Baha'u'llah stands there on the historic plain of Acca. It is the area which Hosea said would be a door of hope for mankind. All the world knows where Baha'u'llah is entombed. No one knows for certain where His Holiness Moses is buried, nor can they be certain which of the places claimed by his various followers is the exact site of the tomb of His Holiness Christ. But the beautified sanctuary of Baha'u'llah and the glorified paths of his feet are known to all. Prophecy.
Isaiah chapter 35, from verses 2 and 4. Carmel and Sharon, they shall see the glory of the Lord. Behold, your God will come. He will come and save you.
Baha'u'llah, whose name means the glory of the Lord, came to Mount Carmel, which looks down upon the plain of Sharon. What an astonishing story. In that same chapter, Isaiah says that the eyes of the blind shall be opened and see the truth. The ears of the deaf shall be unstopped, and they shall hear the truth. The parched ground will become green and verdant. The ransomed people of the Lord shall return from all parts of the world to that spot, rejoicing. And who is Isaiah speaking of? He is speaking about Baha'u'llah, no one else, as you have seen. Baha'u'llah fulfilled all of these wonderful prophecies. Baha'u'llah came to Mount Carmel, that mountain of God. Baha'u'llah has written saying, and we are quoting him now,
O peoples of the earth, this is the one whom the heart of the world remembereth, and is promised in the books of God. I am the one whom the tongue of Isaiah hath extolled, the one with whose name both the Torah and the Evangel, the Gospels, were adorned.
Baha'u'llah was a descendant of Abraham, the father of the faithful. Baha'u'llah was descended from Abraham through his third wife, Keturah. In the book of Genesis, God promises Abraham that one of his seed will inherit the land of Canaan in the last days. In Genesis chapter 12, verse 7, it declares,
And the Lord appeared unto Abram, and said, Unto thy seed will I give this land.
The house where Baha'u'llah lived in Israel in his last days was once in the ancient land of Canaan. Yes. From the terraces of that building, you can look north toward the tip of Lebanon, the land where the ladder of Tyre is found, and the place which Abraham described as the spot chosen by God. In a letter written on the eve of his banishment from Turkey to that spot in ancient Canaan, Baha'u'llah declared,
Had Abraham attained it in this day, he too, falling prostrate upon the ground, would have cried, Mine heart is filled with peace, O thou Lord of all that is in heaven and on earth. I testify that thou hast unveiled before mine eyes all the glory of thy power and the full majesty of thy law.
Well, beloved friends, our time together is almost completely used up, and I can tell you no more. Still, I don't think I need to. On and on and on goes the marvelous account of this wonderful story of the coming of Baha'u'llah. It is a downpour, a shower of prophecies. I feel confident that by this time, many of those you are teaching, are eager to become Baha'is, are waiting to know what they must do to become a follower of Baha'u'llah, the glory of God.
Before we discuss that, let us share with you these two quotations. One is from Baha'u'llah and the other is from Isaiah. From Baha'u'llah, the Redeemer of men, we hear first.
O kings of Christendom, heard ye not the saying of Jesus, the Spirit of God? I go away and come again unto you. Wherefore then did ye fail, when he did come again unto you in the clouds of heaven, to draw nigh unto him, that ye might behold his face, and be of them that attained his presence? In another passage, he, Christ, saith, When he, the Spirit of truth, is come, he will guide you into all truth. And yet, behold, when he did bring the truth, ye refused to turn your faces towards him, and persisted in disporting yourselves with your pastimes and fancies. Ye welcomed him not, neither did ye seek his presence, that ye might hear the verses of God from his own mouth, and partake of the manifold wisdom of the Almighty. Ye have, by reason of your failure, hindered the breath of God from being wafted over you, and have withheld from your soul the sweetness of its fragrance. End of quotation. For each person hearing the story of the coming of Baha'u'llah, this is the day of judgment. There is no turning back. And as Isaiah said, there is no place to flee to except him.
Hear ye deaf, and look ye blind, that ye may see.
Isaiah said that also. These too are the words of Isaiah, taken from chapter 43, verses 8 through 11. Isaiah declared,
Bring forth the blind people that have eyes, and the deaf that have ears. Let all the nations be gathered together, and let the people be assembled. Who among them can declare this, and show us former things? Let them bring forth their witnesses, that they may be justified. Or let them hear and say, It is the truth. Ye are my witnesses, saith the Lord, that I am he. I, even I, am the Lord, and beside me there is no Savior.
Let them bring forth their witnesses, that they may justify it, or let them hear and say, it is the truth. And I am the Lord, and besides me there is no Savior. That's the story of Baha'u'llah. Well, beloved friends, our study class is over.
I've enjoyed every minute of it.
So have I.
I'm sorry it's all over, and I know that we are welcoming many of you now as fellow Baha'is, loving brothers and sisters in the world's greatest and most wonderful family.
Right now, you know, you've heard enough to recognize and accept Baha'u'llah. You can become part of Baha'u'llah's radiant spiritual army. If you have followed this study class all the way, you are ready. We suggest you talk to the Baha'is who are with you, and they'll tell you what steps to take next. We hope that many of you will join us, shoulder to shoulder, not next year or next month or next week nor tomorrow, but right now, while the world needs you so desperately. The writings of the faith of Baha'u'llah declare, and I'm quoting now, above all, the healing message of Baha'u'llah must be vividly, systematically brought to the attention of the masses in their hour of grief, misery, and confusion. There is no time to lose. The hour is ripe for the proclamation without fear, without reserve, and without hesitation, and on a scale never as yet undertaken, of the one message that can alone extricate humanity from the morass into which it is steadily sinking, and from which they who claim to be the followers of Baha'u'llah can and will eventually rescue it. Wouldn't you like to be a part of it?
But only if you truly believe in your heart in the truth of Baha'u'llah, that he is the Redeemer of men. If you do believe that, then we can all work together so that the sorrows and ills and unhappiness of the world may be changed into joy, hope, and confidence.
And that's why Baha'u'llah came into the world, so that through him, Baha'u'llah, the return of Christ, the Savior of men, the world might become one world, so that all mankind might live together as brothers in peace and security and happiness, so that all men might know and believe in their hearts that God is one, and man is one, and all the religions are part of this wonderful new day of God. Welcome.
God is one, man is one, and all the religions are one. Land and sea, hill and valley, under the beautiful sun. God is one, man is one, and all the religions agree. When everyone learns the three onenesses, we'll have world unity. God is one, man is one, and all the religions are one. Land and sea, hill and valley, under the beautiful sun. God is one, man is one, and all the religions agree. When everyone learns the three onenesses, we'll have world unity.